Hey everyone, welcome to the Pleb Critics Podcast. I'm your host Evan, and I'm here with my friends
Skylar,
L. Scribbler,
and Preston.
All right, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you like this channel, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends if you want us to grow, and also follow our friend L. Scribbler, Levi. He's got a YouTube channel, and he's got a Instagram of the same name, and I also have an Instagram at Bad Publicity Records. So don't forget to follow us and tell us what you think about us and how much you hate us.
Or like us.
Or like us, I guess.
Hate gets more traction.
Hate's fun sometimes. Until you get all the death threats.
Hey, that might, at least you're getting some mail.
I guess so. I guess so.
You just look
Somebody
at the...
cares.
Just hopefully it's not packages.
Report that one immediately.
No. Call him Ted K. Anyway, so today we're talking about just kind of it's not really about anything that's coming out right now, or it's not super relevant, but I thought we'd just talk about it. How much live action remakes of animated things suck, right?
Or are good.
Well,
mostly suck. But
I would say
some.
suck when America touches it.
Yeah.
Primarily when the United States decides to take something and try to make it their own, they destroy it. And my prime example for this is Death Note. If you've seen the original Death Note movies done in Japan, they are so amazingly well done. Honestly, if America wanted to take that story and run with it, they could have just made it a sequel to that.
You mean the live action ones they did?
Yeah, the live action ones. They could have made a sequel to that, those 3 live actions they did. Because at the end, the very third movie was basically L. He put his name in the Death Note. This is spoilers for people who haven't seen those great movies. But L won. He ended up defeating Kira. And the thing is, he put his name in the Death Note, only gave himself 14 days to live, and that's how he found N. Netflix could have really just Netflix could have really created a whole spin-off series of N coming to the United States because the Death Note was dropped again. Because let's face it, Ryuk will do this again. He enjoyed watching Light go through all the jumps he had to go through. And I love that. But when America got a hold of it, I mean, Light became this emo kid, and they kind of excused away how he got his name.
Well, and that was the other problem. And we'll get more general in a second, but just because you're talking about this, they took the story and instead of just adapting it and making it different, it's not Light, it's a different guy. It dropped in America, and we're making it an original story based on the Death Note universe. They just had to say, no, this is Light Yagami, and this is L, and all these things, and just completely change everything about not even just the characters and where they lived and who they were and what they're like, but the functionality of the Death Note and the rules of the universe. They changed everything.
Yeah, they changed the rules.
So that's kind of getting at part of the problem that we're talking about. So I have a short list of upcoming live action adaptations, or ones that I think have just released. Mm-hmm. And you guys can tell me whether or not you expect anything good to come of this stuff. Okay, Winx Club, Netflix. Avatar: The Last Airbender series, Netflix. Death Note 2, Netflix.
Oh, yeah, that's coming.
That's doomed to fail.
Cowboy Bebop, Netflix.
That's not going to be good.
The One Piece live adaptation.
I have no idea.
Which I don't think that's Netflix. I think that's just a Japanese studio.
No, that's Netflix.
No, that's Netflix.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah,
it's
that is
Netflix. Oh
Netflix.
my gosh.
That's
Okay.
why I'm so upset at that.
All right.
But at least the creator is somewhat involved.
Well, they said the same thing with Avatar: The Last Airbender when they first made that into a live adaptation. The first time around, I was excited for it. But what happened? They completely changed the power system. Just to make
Shyamalan.
it was just what the heck is going on
he's
here?
He's creating fire out of nothing.
Yeah.
It's the dumbest. That's how fire bending works in the show. Why did you add this?
Yeah,
okay.
the thing that was amazing was the lightning. But
so beyond that, just from Disney, there's going to be The Little Mermaid coming out this year, an untitled Jungle Book sequel, a Lion King sequel, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs remake, an untitled Aladdin sequel, which I actually kind of hope is 40 Thieves, because that was a dope movie, but I don't know if they'll do that.
The Prince of Thieves, you mean?
Isn't it Aladdin and the 40 Thieves?
No, it's...
Oh, it's the Prince of Thieves?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I don't care.
But they have a song called 40
They're doing a Hunchback of Notre Dame remake. a Bambi remake, and a Hercules remake. I don't know if those are all necessarily slated for this year.
They already did Hercules. They've done it a few times.
The remake?
Not the Disney remake, but they've made that several times.
Well, but there's
a
a comic book version of Hercules.
Yeah.
There's the original.
Yeah.
There's the animation.
Well, and then the Hercules one is going to be done by the Russo brothers.
Okay.
And so I have hope for that one.
As long as it has the peak music and they don't wash it out like they did with the Lion King.
So there's also Peter Pan and Wendy, Pinocchio, Sword and Stone, Robin Hood, another Aladdin spinoff, I think, unless I'm reading this wrong, and a Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
That's going to be creepy.
Why? Why?
Money.
Well, that's primarily it. Is creativity is dead. You can say that in Hollywood. If you look at the directors they have and some of the creatives they have and the people they hire to actually create, Hollywood is creatively bankrupt. They're having to steal ideas from their past and try to rejuvenize it. The problem is every time they do that, they destroy it.
Right. And as evidenced by some like Ghost in the Shell, the first Death Note, Avatar, M. Night Shyamalama Ding Dong, Dragon Ball Evolution.
Oh my gosh, terrible film.
I mean, there have been some, the TMNT one from 2014. That was pretty bad.
I forgot about that one.
I mean,
It did spawn a sequel though,
Yeah.
so it's popular.
And then it
right. But it's like with the track record like that, like why keep making things live action? Well, I don't understand it. Like,
I think they think it's going to keep making money. Because look at Lion King. I hated that movie going in to see it. I was excited.
The new one, you mean?
Yeah, the new one.
It is technically not live action.
Exactly. I was confused because it was just like, they keep saying this is a live action remake, but those aren't real lions. Those aren't real cheetahs or whatever.
They're not?
It's just like, those are just actors on a set with dots on their faces. Is that what you mean by live action? Because that's not live action.
No,
that is computer-generated imagery.
That wasn't mocap. That was pre-animated.
No mocap.
It was pre-animated, and then they just went in and did the camera shots.
Then technically it wasn't live action at all.
Yeah,
Nothing even similar. So it's just like the gall to call it live action. Just because you can have animation look more realistic doesn't mean it's real.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what is making certain things, because a lot of studios are starting to go back to the practical effects because they look more real than those special effects.
Right. Well, and that's kind of true in a lot of ways where you, like with animation as well, you know, in the recent number of years, I think really starting in like 2011, CGI animated films began to look more what you would say timeless. They started to get to a point where you're like, okay, the artistry is there, the technology's there, even though like a film from 2011 like Tangled doesn't look as good as a film that came out last year or this year, like Coco or like Soul. It still looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, it's built to last. It has a long shelf lifespan.
But you know what else still looks good? Is Sleeping Beauty from 1959 or whenever that came out.
Because of the way it was done. Everything that was shot in film or that film format where they have the negatives of can always be re-rendered into an amazing looking.
There is that too. Like how they're re-releasing all the Star Wars in 4K.
Yes, because they can. It was shot in film. I mean,
there's no such thing as resolution.
Yes, it's literally the light. It captures the light. So it's the highest quality it will ever be.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. That's just the thing. Like, when you put something to live action, it just immediately becomes not timeless.
Yes.
And that's frustrating to me as like, I'm a person, I like practical effects. I don't like when they have like, you watch all these remasters of films from like the early 2000s and all the digitized, like all the special effects were rendered in 1080. You can't upscale the 1080 rendered graphics. They're just stuck where they are.
Yeah.
You know,
but going back to that, I mean, I understand why they're doing it because they just need money. They're creatively bankrupt. And I don't know.
I guess like why not redo a film in animation? I mean, I know it's expensive, but maybe that's it. Like, but it's still really expensive to recreate some things from animation in real life. So
I think one of the issues with redoing it also with live action is they try to make it relevant to what's going on now. Every time they'll add more relevant jokes.
Yeah.
And let's face it, those things don't land after a year. We're in the era of like TikTok. We're in the era of like a joke that lasts less than an hour. it'll be there and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And if it finds its way into a film, it's stuck there forever. I still don't know why in Black Panther people are laughing.
Those?
Yeah, I still don't know what that joke is in reference of.
It's so stupid.
I still don't know
It's
to
a
this
Vine.
day. But Vine's no longer around.
No.
So that is no longer classic. It's just like in Just Friends, that joke where it's just like, am I being punked? Where's Ashton? That's not going to last. That's not going to land with anyone who's being born or watching that movie now.
Kids in 15 years are going to be looking in encyclopedias
Yeah.
for punked.
It's just like, what is this in reference to? It doesn't make any sense when people try to add their nowadays jokes, make it timeless, make it last forever.
Right. And I just don't know. I mean, there's plenty of films that are live action that are timeless, that look still really, really good so many years later, that have that feeling that is hard to recapture. You know, stuff shot in Panavision and
well, if you look at it,
like
most
that.
of them are classic films that were shot in film, and jokes back then didn't last just an hour. It took forever for things to get around that if they were going to make a relevant joke, it's probably still relevant today, or it's considered offensive today. One or the other. Either way, it's going to land.
Right. I imagine that like in 50 years, we will still be watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yep.
We probably won't still be watching the Aladdin remake from 2018.
Or Lion King remake.
More than likely. I mean, maybe some people will be like, "Oh, I'm a super Disney-holic and I watch all the old classics," as they'll call them at that point, you know.
Well, and I think some people, it's like that captures their nostalgia. And that's exactly what Disney is doing, because we're doing this thing all about animation remakes. If you type in animation remakes on Google, you only get Google lists. Google lists. You only get Disney lists.
Yeah. It was actually hard to find other films.
Yes.
For like, I can't even find the Scooby-Doo films, which are definitely live action remakes of an animated
they're
thing.
adaptations, not really remakes.
I guess you got a point, but I would put that in the same realm of what we're talking about.
Yeah, those are both in the topic.
So before we get too far down the rabbit hole, I think we need to kind of solidify what is a live action remake. Like, what are we technically talking about today?
Yeah. So it's really anything that was like animated before and then was adapted or changed to be live action. So like this doesn't really include things like comic book movies. Like otherwise the whole Marvel universe would be a live action adaptation, which is not really what I'm looking to do. And it's a whole other can of worms, but it's like you take something like Sleeping Beauty or like, you know, Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty hasn't been redone, but you know what I mean? Cinderella's been redone. Aladdin's been redone.
Sleeping Beauty has been redone. It's called Maleficent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's not a redo.
That was a Maleficent story.
Right, that's
too.
a Maleficent
True.
story. And that's the thing. It's so there's actually like a lot of like hard spots here where you're like, that doesn't really count to me. It's a spinoff. You know?
That's true.
Well, then like you have Scooby-Doo, where they're not remaking an episode of Scooby-Doo, right? They're not doing it. They're doing an original story, but it's adapted from the animated universe of Scooby-Doo or something, right?
So it's just like its standalone episode in and of itself.
In a sense, that's what it is. And I find like the Scooby-Doo movies like a little like less egregious than some other things, where it's like, yeah, you're making an entirely different beast. Like Scooby-Doo was not created to be an hour and 40-minute escapade or whatever. Although they do have lots of movies.
I was going to say they release like 2 movies every year.
That's true.
But that goes back to like the topic you're not wanting to do comic adaptations, but everything that's done in manga goes to anime and then goes to live action when the West decides to destroy it.
Right.
So is that falling under the comic book category, or would that be?
I would say that that's a remake. So like yesterday,
because it's primarily most people watch it as anime.
As animation.
Most people don't read the manga.
Right, exactly. And that's for a lot of people, like including myself, I'm totally an anime pleb. Like I don't really read the mangas personally, but like yesterday I watched Ghost in the Shell, the original.
Yes.
And then I watched the remake. And I think that the problems that are like encased within the like those two films in terms of like the differences are super indicative like of other films and what they do to the source material.
Well, I think it's primarily when America gets a hold of something, because there is difference between Western and Eastern writing styles.
Yeah.
And they want to adapt it to a Western style, something people in the West are used to reading, where there's one focal point instead of the Nakama kind of tree where you follow a group of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's primarily an Eastern writing style. I mean, the similarity is basically Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, where it's basically following one character, and then Journey to the West,
yeah.
which is a group of people. I mean, those are basically, they're both one and the same story, except one only follows one character. The other one follows a group of people who work together to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
And one's a Western style, one's an Eastern style. That they always tend to try to adapt the Eastern styles into a Western style, and it just never fits because it's meant to have that group dynamic.
Or like it's just a different thing. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen Ghost in the Shell or
I have not
seen the remakes. I'm not gonna like spoil anything if you're ever interested in watching the film.
It's not a good movie. The original is great. The remake is...
So the original is weird. It's a totally weird film. The structure is like just out there in a lot of ways, where like there is a plot, but the plot is like almost secondary to everything else in the film. Like the themes and the internal sort of like...
It's a theme-driven movie.
Yes, it really is a theme-driven movie. And there's like an entire section in the middle of it that's like 4 minutes long that has no dialogue, no character action, nothing. It is just shots of the city as this character is like observing things around them. And you can't even tell if time is passing or like if they're happening in sequential order. Yeah. But it's just to capture, like, it's right after a scene where like they start to kind of explore these topics that the film is addressing, and then it kind of goes from there and just like lets you sit and soak and think about the things that you just like heard. And then the film ends like very non-climactically. Like there's a big fight scene, but it's not like the good guy and the bad guy fighting each other, and like it's just like there's a fight and then there is a resolution. And there's really not a lot of like, after that, there's nothing really. I mean, you just kind of see like, they like, oh, this is what happened, you know, and you're like, oh, really? And then she's like, yep. And then she like walks off.
Yeah. Well, that's very common. I mean, that's the same thing that happened basically in Aelita. And the issue with Aelita is everyone who's a fan of basically Aelita Battle Angel or the manga is, it should have been done very dark. Because there's this one scene like at the very beginning where she is picked up by, I forgot the guy's name.
Mr. Doctor Man.
No, not him.
Mr. Man.
When she finds her boyfriend, real boyfriend type thing. And they're driving through the city and he's talking about this is a slum. This looks like a terrible place. It looked like a beach town. It looked clean. It looked organized. I was like, I would rather live there than where I'm at right now. It was just like...
You also live in California, so this is a bad
But that's the thing. It was just like, he's complaining about things. He's like, I want to go live up in the tower. And it was just like, this is not relevant at all to what was in the manga or even the anime.
Well, and that was like kind of with the Ghost in the Shell, the 2017 film with Scarlett Johansson, where they totally added characters. They added plot lines. They brought in this art style that wasn't even close to the original. It was like the guy, like, I don't know who actually directed it. It might have been the guy. It wasn't the guy that did 2049, was it?
I can't remember.
Blade Runner?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's not Villanueva or whatever his name is?
No, it's not him.
Okay. Because it's like, I could have sworn it was the same guy because it's like they took...
The shots seem very similar.
Well, they just took all of that because the world of Ghost in the Shell is like falling apart. It is not really high tech. Like they have some high tech things. Obviously the robots are very high tech and all that stuff, but there's no holograms, you know, there's not like the city streets are dilapidated and falling apart. There's rivers running through the city because of a giant flood that happened. And like, then the new adaptation, the city is super clean. It looks like Neo Tokyo. There's holograms everywhere, like because they're trying to do the Blade Runner thing, right?
Yeah.
Where they've got the giant video billboards and
but
stuff.
Even Blade Runner had rundown areas, except all the population lived in the areas that they could live in. But if you looked outside the city landscape, it was covered with like dirt and everything.
Well, and then you go, but that's the same problem where you go like Blade Runner 1 to the 2049 remake, and it looks nothing really like the original. It's not really that faithful. So, and I think that's a problem a lot of animated adaptations actually have, where they're not really that faithful to the original in terms of the plot. They add things to pad the runtime. The Ghost in the Shell anime was 120 minutes. The Ghost in the Shell live action remake was almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
So they added like 40 minutes of content.
I think not only that is you can get away with a lot in animation. Like you mentioned before, in animation, you can kill off many people without people actually having a real connection to it. In the Pixar podcast, if you haven't seen it or listened to it, watch it. But it's when you go to live action, I think the same thing happened with, like, if you look at the Suicide Squad, they got something and it probably seemed too dark that they had to change it to where it's more homey to the audience who will be watching it. That they change it, they really dial it down, because a lot of the scenes that are in manga or anime would be considered R if they're put on a screen, if they're made live action.
That's true.
However, when it's animated, you can get away with like a PG-13 rating.
Yeah.
But you put it to live action and seeing someone's arm ripped out of their socket, that is a very violent scene.
Well, it's also very hard to do.
Yeah.
Like this is actually like one of the points I was going to make, and I can do it now, is I actually believe that animation is a better medium than live action for many genres.
I can agree with that.
It makes it so much easier to suspend your disbelief in animation than when you're watching live action. Because just like watching Fast and the Furious, you instantly get clocked out as soon as you see him jump over an entire building with his car.
Right.
That makes no sense. For me, who's very logical, it's just a terribly done movie. It's action-packed. It can be put on in the background, but when you put it to live action, if you did that as an animation, I would be all for it.
Right.
Why? Because it's cars. They're doing insane things. It's basically Transformers.
Well, and you can be so dynamic, like with the shots, because the camera doesn't exist, right? The camera is fake. It's just what you're drawing in your mind's eye. And so you can go like under a car and then through it, and then like a bullet whizzes past you and you go through like the bullet hole in the window and you go to the guy's face and like you see him all grit. Like, but you can do all sorts of crazy things.
They have been able to get away with that with how CGI is getting. Right. You now see scenes like you can start out with a opening of Deadpool where the car is frozen and you're basically traveling through the car, which you could have never done beforehand. And it looks pretty realistic because it's done in a slow pace.
But then there is that, like, it's more expensive to do.
Because it takes a lot more. You have to make it look more realistic. Yeah. However, when it's animation, it's so much easier to do it and you can exactly imagine it. Right. I mean, you can go into someone's eye and have basically them run through their brain, everything. I mean, things you couldn't do beforehand.
Okay, but here is the big difference. Animation is seen as childish.
Right.
And so a lot of people I know say, oh, I don't want to watch that movie because I'm not a child. And it's like, no, animation is a beautiful art form. As we talked about with Pixar last week, it is trying to go for all ages. And so the reason that they adapt these things is, one, it's a new thing, so people are going to watch it. Because if they just reanimate it, they're like, oh, it's just the same thing over again. But if they follow, and Disney is super criminal in doing this, they follow the same exact thing, but they do it in live action. Now it's different. Rather, if they basically made the same movie again and animated, it's like, why are people going to watch that? Nothing is different. So adding this gimmick. So right now, live action remakes is the gimmick of animation.
Right. And that's like, I actually wonder if it's kind of detrimental to the art form. And I think it is in certain ways, because you're taking an animated thing and it's harder to make the genie feel like he's real. You know, it's harder to take these characters that are larger than life and cartoony and build them into a real world and make them feel like they mesh properly. Like, I always felt like the CGI looks a little uncanny valley to me in a lot of the Disney remakes. Like, just not my thing, right? But then you see, like, there's that cartoons are looked at as childish, but at the same time in America, what are some of the raunchiest shows on television?
Animated.
They're animated.
Yeah. Rick and Morty's, the Family Guys, the
Simpsons.
Yeah.
Right. And even beyond that, I mean, Adult Swim has an entire litany of shows that are really disgusting, like Mr. Pickles and, you know, I don't know, Laser Wolf. I haven't watched Laser Wolf. I don't know anything about it. I have
never even heard of it.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Like, so it's like animation has this weird gap in the middle where it's like, oh, if you're up to 12 years of age, like, animation's for you. And then past that, and then like once you're 18 or something,
and older, this
now
is for
you can watch all this disgusting stuff that we put in animation because we couldn't get away with it in live action. It's too disgusting, right? And it's too expensive, probably, to do some of that stuff.
Well, I think that's where anime really bridged the middle ground primarily, especially in the Western, got really a lot of Western fans into it, like with Dragon Ball Z is primarily the middle ground. Things like One Piece, the Shonen Jump type of anime style really did help bridge the gap here in the Western audience that a lot of people who are in between those kid Pixar ages to the Adult Swim ages can watch anime and really get invested in something that's for them.
Well, and I just remember, like, if anybody is in their 20s or a little bit older, they probably remember Toonami.
Yep.
Right? And like you would be watching Cartoon Network, and then like Dexter's Lab would stop and they'd be like, oh, no, it's time for Toonami. And they'd have the guy that voices
robot.
Tom. Yeah, they'd have Tom that, voiced by the guy who does Spike Spiegel and a few other, like, does a bunch of other characters.
He does a lot.
He would get into his ship.
He was Jeb in
turn it on.
The new Star Wars series. I can't remember his name. Anyway, and he would come on and like, then it would start, Inuyasha. You have that show. You would have Bobobo.
Yeah.
You would have
Rurouni
Kenshin or... Dragon Ball Z was obviously like the big ticket item, and then they started showing things like Naruto, or they'd have they had all these different.
But Naruto was around the time when it disappeared.
Yeah, it was around for a few years.
Yeah,
but that was the thing is like it was always so interesting to see like, oh, this is different. Like there's violence and they're yelling at each other, and it's episodic. So you're actually following a narrative from episode to episode. It's not like SpongeBob where the slate's wiped.
I think it started around like time-wise at I think 4 or 5 o'clock. So when the high schoolers would have finished with their homework, that's when Toonami would come out.
That's true.
And then it would go to Adult Swim around 8 o'clock, I think it was.
And if you think about like those kinds of shows, especially in like the 2000s or the 90s, or I don't know, choose a time, there really weren't equivalent live action shows that did the sort of high flying action that these shows did. You could not have adapted with the size of budgets that they were doing for TV shows at the time. You couldn't have done Avatar: The Last Airbender. You couldn't have done a lot of these shows like Cowboy Bebop or like, choose an anime. Just choose one.
Well, because it gets more expensive as soon as you have to have real props, real actors, getting a voice actor, and then basically slaving a few artists to draw everything for you. It becomes much easier than having to pay everybody on staff.
It is definitely work intensive. Like animation is not necessarily like an easy path, but I do believe like for things like fantasy, sci-fi, anything that's fictional that has like really fantastical or larger than life elements, I think that animation is perfect for that. And we already know the strengths of animation for comedy.
Dare you? Avatar was amazing.
Wait, what you mean the live action?
Yeah, because Avatar, the blue people. Because technically that's fantasy, and everyone seems to love it for some apparent reason. Because the way it was done, it can take you to a completely different world.
That's the thing. That was a huge budget film.
Yeah,
you could have animated an Avatar Blue People series for a lot less money or an equivalent amount of money and stretched it for a lot longer and had a story that was more fleshed out and a world that was more fleshed out.
Well, that's what's funny.
Instead of finger wagging at the audience the whole time.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Well, that's the funny thing. If you actually took that movie, if you actually did the reverse of what's going on here, took that movie and turned it into an animation shot for shot, people would hate it. Because it's not a good movie. People go to animation for story, action, everything else that they can't get in live action because they tend to take that all out when they get to live action.
Well, there's something like live action does have its strengths. Like I think you get performances that can be a lot stronger and a lot deeper with a live action because you get all the nuance of facial movements, of body language.
But it also involves casting the right actor. And then that's another big budget.
And that's a big problem, I think, when it comes to these live action remakes is that when you're casting somebody for their voice talent, you're generally going for their voice. They don't always do this. Like there was that infamous time with like the Ant Bully, where they hired a big name actor to
Nicolas Cage, Meryl Streep.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was totally flop and nobody knew what they were doing. Like the voice acting was apparently really bad in that film. I didn't really.
Because they didn't know how to actually act.
Yeah.
It's basically like watching.
It's different acting without a camera in front of you.
Well, it's not just that, but when you're acting to a microphone, it's just like when you act like in a suit of armor. Nobody can see your motions, so you have to basically portray them through your actions. So a lot of voice actors tend to be like stage actors. It's like they're on the theater, which I honestly see is a big issue with a lot of actors who don't know how to act behind a helmet because they can't put all their nuances in their emotions, which is where it needs to rely.
Yeah.
Then that goes with like the voice acting. A lot of the actors don't know how to deal with that they literally just talk to the microphone. It has nothing to do with who's in the room. They just talk to the microphone instead of seeing everything that's around them, imagining it, because let's face it, most of them don't have an imagination.
Wow.
They are told what to believe.
So uncharitable, but kind of true. But that's the thing, like when you want to, so then they adapt it and they're like, oh, we're going to do it live action. So instead of choosing, someone that has the voice and has the stage presence, especially musicals are super bad at this. Like when they redid the Beauty and the Beast, and it was clear that Emma Watson did not have the stage chops to sing and dance and do a real musical like they used to do, right? But they hire people from these animated films and musicals and things for their recognizable faces.
Yeah.
Well, the Dan Stevens is the one who stole the show in that movie just because he has that type of presence.
Yeah, he was okay.
He was the beast.
He did okay. Yeah.
Well, but too, he is technically hiding behind all that CGI. And so, like you're saying, his voice is the one portraying it. And a lot of times in these live action remakes, if they are hybrid animation, which is pretty much anything CGI related or hand-drawn animation onto the cells themselves, they are the ones that stand out because these are just voice actors who are already doing the role a lot of times who come in and steal the show because it's like, oh, that's the thing I like. Like when you had the Scooby-Doo movies, you had Frank Welker come in who had been Scooby-Doo forever already and do it again. So you're like, oh, yes, that's the heart of the character. That is who it is. Why? Because it's a guy that you already love is doing it rather than casting new people who may not fit the bill. Although the Scooby-Doo, I will say, is probably one of the most faithful casting live adaptations.
Oh my God.
Yes,
like
that
everything,
was amazing.
Yes.
Well, because the Shaggy actually ended up being the new Shaggy.
Yes,
he
after
was
that.
great in that role.
Yes.
Well, and all of them, like I actually just listened to a podcast with Velma of live action person on that one.
Linda Cardinelli.
Yes.
And she does voice acting too, doesn't she?
Occasionally, yeah.
Okay.
She's more of a live action actress, but she was Wendy in Gravity Falls, and
the guy who does Freddy does quite a bit of
Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah,
he was also in Rebels as Kanan.
Kanan.
Oh, okay.
And his wife did guest star on
Sarah she was Daphne, so Sarah Michelle Gellar, and she was also Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
But anyways, all these people were casted perfectly, and you listen to all of them say how they got that job. They took the jobs very seriously. They knew they were filling in big shoes of animation legends. They didn't just want to get the job for the money. I mean, that's awesome, but they're like, no, I went in there and said, how can I be true to this character?
Yeah.
How can I actually follow this? And a lot of them, will later be in the Scooby-Doo universe, maybe as their own characters or as other characters, because they were so true to the characters and fell in love with the franchise as a whole. Because I think that's where you get these live action adaptations that are amazing, because they actually know the heart of the content that they are doing, rather than just going, oh, here's a script for something I've never seen or heard of before.
Yep. Well, and you get that sometimes, like, so it's actually funny. So one of the worst like live action adaptations, the Dragon Ball Evolution, the main guy who played Goku, I can't remember any of the actors' names.
Yeah. Well, that kind of was the start and destruction of their career.
He actually had read and watched like almost all of Dragon Ball for the role, and he took it pretty seriously. And the guy who played Piccolo was already a huge fan when he got casted. And everyone says that he had like the best performance in the film. I don't remember that much about it.
Well, he didn't have that much screen time as well. So that's probably
true.
why. Because I remember him. I like him as an actor, but It was kind of sad.
Right. Well, there was actually a lot of people on that set that like they wanted to do a good job. They were invested in it. I don't know about everybody. I don't think every cast was a good cast. Like Bulma, I don't know why.
Bulma
was
Yamcha
dumb.
sounded like Yamcha.
Yamcha was stupid.
She was basically dubbed over for that entire film. You can tell.
Oh, really?
They can. What is it called? Audio.
It's called ADR.
ADR.
You can tell they ADR her entire all her lines.
Wow, that's really bad.
Yeah, when you flab that bad.
ADR ain't exactly cheap to do either. It's not easy. But that's the thing is like you have people who they have good intentions and they want to be part of something, and then it just totally sucks.
Well, just like with going back to Avatar, they had the actual writers there helping out Shyamalan, apparently, write it and help them. But it's just like you don't see any presence there. So you wonder where it actually is, because it's great when you hear the actors passionate about the role. But if the director, if the writer, if the actual producers don't feel any passion for the project, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Because the actors can only bring so much. However, if the directors and writers and producers all want to get it done, yet the actors don't actually have that presence with the character like you see in the new Disney remakes.
Yeah.
Because the characters they cast don't even seem to know who they are or don't have the presence. It's one of those things that it's just like you need everyone on board or else the whole thing's going to flop.
I say The Lion King was the biggest offender of that one.
Yeah. But here's the thing about the Avatar. You're trying to get 8 hours of season 1. That's how long it is.
Yep.
And turn it into an hour and 43 minutes.
Yeah, no.
So rather than like we're saying some of these being less of a remake and more of an adaptation.
It is more of an adaptation.
And so that one tried to be a remake and it ended up being more of an adaptation when they should have just done more of an original story rather than try to do the whole quest and like put in parts like, oh, we're going to show that they were over here. We're going to show that they kind of did some of these things and it's just the whole season. No, that didn't work. And they didn't even know what they were doing because like you guys are saying, they changed it. So for something to work, they need to stay true to the heart of the series. And they did not stay true to the heart of the series. They didn't know how bending worked. They can't even name the character right.
Yeah, Sokka,
Ong. I mean, I can understand if this was written media where it was like a book before because then it's like, oh, how do we say this? Yes. Right. And it's like, it could have been said wrong. But it's like, no, go listen to the series. Literally listen to the pronunciation of this word. And you messed that up.
Yeah. It'd be like adapting Harry Potter and calling Harry like Hari and Hermione and
Hermione
and Rowan.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
That makes me want to ask you. Then, if you think that it would have been done better as a show, are you excited that Netflix is going to adapt it as a live action show?
The fact that it's Netflix and that the creators left saying they don't agree with the vision, no. Like I was excited.
That's exactly it.
And I'm already like I already kind of don't trust Bryke after what they did to Korra, but like even for them to say this is an abomination
of the stories that they have created.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. They are the parents and they're watching their own kids be butchered in front of them and they can't do anything about it because they gave the rights over to the slaughterhouse.
Wow.
Hannibal Lecter is in control of it now.
I mean, how a lot of that works, though, in the beginning, when you're selling an animated series, back in the olden days of like the 90s and the 2000s, you were selling it. You didn't get to keep the rights because you don't have your own studio.
They would like to keep the
rights.
creative on board just to create more, but
yeah. So like if you look at anything from the 90s and 2000, all those creators, they're pretty much done with the thing after that original series run is over. So when you see a live action adaptation, film-wise or TV series-wise, the reason it might not feel like it has the same heart is because the creator that knew what these creations were supposed to do, how they were supposed to act, is no longer on board.
Right, which is just it's so stupid.
And that's also why they don't do so well. Because people, even though someone who doesn't know anything about a movie can go in and realize when there's not heart there. You can tell after a while that it's just like it doesn't have the same soul.
Yeah.
Because a movie does carry a sort of lifespan to it because these are timeless things that will last forever unless they end up in Disney's vault.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, we're talking about kind of a lot of the negativities, but I would like to move over to some positive. Like, I don't know if you guys even have cartoons turned into live action that you like. I talked about Scooby-Doo, love those ones.
Scooby-Doo, Space Jam.
Yeah, Space Jam. But another really good one that I felt it was a new story, a new perspective that we hadn't seen before, but I also think they stayed so true to the heart of the original characters that it worked. The Christopher Robin film. I think...
Yeah, I heard that was good,
It was honestly amazing because everything felt so true to the story. Like, they aged up Christopher Robin. They had a wife. They had a kids. It was a whole new story, whole new perspective on everything. Yet, Winnie the Pooh was the same. And you had all the other the characters who still had this childlike innocence and had to reteach Christopher Robin about this. And
they had the same voice cast for the...
Mainly. There was a couple of differences.
I mean, it's as long as they didn't choose like Eddie Murphy to play Eeyore.
Yeah.
You know?
No, there was a few changes, but the biggest thing was the guy that voices Pooh. Help me out here, Skylar.
Well, it's not Jim Cummings, right?
It is Jim Cummings.
Okay, because he does Tigger too.
Yes.
Yeah, he does a lot of...
And so they actually...
He keeps coming on.
Yeah,
yes, he does.
He keeps showing up.
It's Jim Cummings. You
can't talk about voices without his name being dropped
or Frank
once
Welker,
or twice.
Yeah.
Anyways, though, the reason that film worked is because of Jim Cummings. His voice performance carried the thing. And I actually saw articles once that movie first came out. They're like, there's an Oscar-winning performance in this movie, and it's not Ian McGregor. It's Jim Cummings.
Yeah.
And because, like his voice carried it and really made you feel something. Like, I would definitely recommend that movie if you're like, oh, no, they can't live adaptation anything. No. Go watch that film. Like, it works 100%.
Right.
Well, because it takes it more into the future than really trying to remake the entire story.
Exactly.
And,
which is why it probably works, because it's just taking advantage of the technology they have now.
There's that. I would say like that, for something like that, where you look at like, why wouldn't they make it animated? Well, because I think that making it real life kind of grounds it as like, oh, well, this is Christopher Robin grown up. And this is him like trying to deal with this idea that like, oh, wait, I don't know the story, but it's clearly he like doesn't remember that they're like real or whatever or some weird thing.
He remembers.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, because I haven't
because
seen
I've heard things back and like vague stuff about it.
I will say he technically doesn't remember. He thinks he like imagined it. So
well, that's the thing. That's what I thought was would be amazing, because when you have it as animation, you as a kid can imagine it all as an imaginary thing, because it's animation. It's all creative. But when you bring it to live action and actually have an actor playing Christopher Robin and everything, and you bring the Pooh and everyone in as actual live characters, it becomes a lot more fascinating because, okay, everything actually is real at this point.
I think it serves the motive of the film to kind of like have that, oh, he's adulting, he's growing up or whatever. I think that makes sense. But like, if you were to say, oh, I want to make a Winnie the Pooh film, I'd be like, animate it.
Yeah.
Like, because it's a Christopher Robin film.
Yeah. Well, and that's why they went for it. But my point being is they followed the heart. And that's all you got to do if you're adapting it. You don't even need the same story. Like, just follow the source material and be faithful to it. It could be entirely different ages of people, different creative visions. But if you just have the main formula, which in that one was pretty simple, you had the characters in the 100 Acre Woods and the same attitude of those characters, it's going to work.
Yeah.
But like, that's why it worked, is because they took it to, they changed it up enough to where it was new. But imagine if they had actually had a kid and everything. They tried to make it basically the same story, just over again as live action. It would probably lose its heart at that point.
Exactly. And so I would also go to another great one. You did bring it up with Space Jam. Yeah. And Space Jam is a hybrid animation, and they knew not to CGI those characters.
Yeah.
Those are hand drawn.
Well, that was also in 90 something.
Yeah, it was cheaper.
It was 96.
Yeah, 96. It was a bit cheaper to draw than.
Well, the CGI looked like, disgusting.
Yeah, but it worked, especially with mixing it in and trying to bring the fact that in their world, the rules were completely different. They were more joke. I mean, he could stretch his arm out to dunk a ball halfway across the court.
Yeah.
The rules changed adapting to which world they were in. However, even when they were in the real world, the Looney Tunes characters, they could still be hit. They could still be devoured, eaten by a dog, and still be fine.
Yeah.
And it was just so well done because the focus was actually on Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. The other characters were just messing around to be humor for everything. And the Monstars were awesome, and I wished I had some toys of them.
Well, and I mean, like you're saying, though, they had their rules of the universe stay true, even though they walked in our universe. And right there is the winner. If they would have come to our universe and like stubbed their toe and had been like, "Oh no, I hurt,"
or when the dog attacked, which the Daffy Duck?
It was Daffy.
Yeah.
And then if they would have actually been hurt, you're like, "Whoa, that's not true." But it's
and
like,
this
no,
is not for kids.
Exactly. Yeah, that'd be horrifying.
Daffy Duck gets mauled by a pit bull. Yeah. He spends half the movie in the ICU.
But that's the point, is even if you bring it to a new location, have the rules of the universe still stay the same, and you're going to have it work. And I love that film. Like you're talking about the timeless jokes. All the jokes in there are honestly timeless. There's a couple things that there's like a Pulp Fiction reference.
Yes.
But you don't have to know it's a Pulp Fiction reference.
Yeah. It's more funny because it's just like they're pointing guns at them suddenly or whatever.
That's what I like, is when there's jokes that are subtle enough to where people who are fans of something can understand it.
Right.
Not where it's blatantly a piece of dialogue where they're pointing it out and people who don't know what that dialogue is in reference to don't understand.
Because like if they would have...
go ahead.
No, you first.
No.
Okay. If they would have done that scene and then went, an El Royale with cheese, done that whole line of it instead of just the two characters being suits and then start shooting.
Right.
Like we got the reference. They didn't need, like you're saying, the extra dialogue that's gonna weigh it down.
Yeah. And I mean, at the very least, like they were referencing, I think was Pulp Fiction 93 or 94.
I don't know,
something like that. I think it was around those years.
So like probably.
I don't know if it was that late. It might have been,
because it would probably have to be about 2 years before for them to animate.
Yeah. So at the very least, they may have gotten lucky that they referenced a film that is like insanely popular and still like a cult film to this day. So the joke actually still lands because most people can recognize it. It's a pop culture icon.
But the thing is, you also don't need to see the film to actually find it funny.
Yeah.
Because I saw it as a kid and I laughed my head off at that scene because here you see them stand up holding guns. Where'd they get the guns? Yeah. It adds to the Looney Tune aspect as well. So it plays on their own world.
It's the exact opposite of like the "what are those" joke.
Yeah.
Because it's not funny out of context.
Yeah. Because I never knew what the joke was in reference to begin with. And to this day, I still wonder what was in reference to. Yeah. But I don't want to know. I want to find it out on my own somehow. I'm not going to Google it. Nobody tell me.
I want to be mad.
Well, and I've watched old comedy movies, and sometimes I literally have to lean over to my dad and be like, what is happening? I don't get that joke. And he's like, oh, it was an old commercial from the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
How am I going to get this joke? Like you're saying, that timeless feel is not there because they were making movies for the now. And I think, though, we know movies are going to be preserved. We know they can be watched on streaming services forever.
Yeah.
And so it's like, now we need to keep these movies where they have a long shelf life. So don't do these jokes and things that are gonna like kill the movie, but also keep them grounded. Like, if it's honestly like the "what are those" jokes, I could care less because it's only one joke. But it's these movies that have so many of these time specific things.
You got to reference things that are like 10 years old plus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's what
things
it is.
that have lasted for so long and will still continue to last.
Like you can see like the joke in the original Avengers where they're like, oh, he comes down with his flying monkeys, and Steve Rogers is like, I got that reference.
Yes.
I got that. And that's actually like a great moment because you go, yeah, everybody can actually get that reference because you would have had to have been asleep in 1926 or whenever that film came out to not like get the reference. It's so endemic in the pop culture.
And to who his character is as well. So it plays off of that as well.
Right.
If the character, like if you go to Wakanda and all that stuff, how are they relevant to what's going on in Vines here in America? Why do they care? That's Wakanda forever. Why are they in?
Like why are they on Vine?
Exactly. They shouldn't be on Vine. They're trying to stay off the grid. So it opens up that kind of can of worms. It was just like, why doesn't the entire world? How do you keep the kids? If the kids have access to computers, why aren't they?
How aren't they not showing it? Yeah. Well, so I mean, that's not the point. It was just something stupid written in.
But that's what I mean. Like it opens a can of worms.
They could have come up with anything else. Anyway, I mean,
or just not had it. There was no point to add apparently a laugh there.
No, it was to make the little sister look relatable and
exactly.
Young.
She's like the most insufferable character in the MCU.
She is cute though.
in my opinion.
I'm just gonna say.
All right. I was just gonna ask, since we were talking about good live action adaptations, Evan, is there any that stand out to you as good?
Man, I'm not sure. I've heard Alita is good, but I haven't seen it.
It is good. I never saw the original series.
If you never saw it is actually enjoyable. However, if you've read the manga, if you've watched the anime, it kind of really falls flat. However, the villain, Edward Norton's character, is kind of... you'll have to watch it because it really is just like, what the heck?
I would say if you haven't seen it, which I hadn't, you will enjoy it most likely.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is a lot of this stuff...
Forcing sequels.
If they're grabbing things that are a little more obscure, a little more niched audience, it actually can work in their favor because the less people that have not seen it, they can change the rules.
Right.
And it would be okay. Because
Alita Battle Angel is an obscure anime that most people haven't even bothered to see or even read the manga, even less so. So it's one of those that since it's been adapted as a movie, only the fans who had seen the manga or seen the anime or read the manga.
See the manga too, yeah.
Technically, will actually see that it's not truly loyal to its source material. However, the majority of the audience out there who have seen it aren't exactly people who have ever heard that it was anything before.
Yeah.
That is very true.
Which is why it works.
And there's also a level of like they crafted a good film.
Yeah.
From what I understand. Like I think you can take something and take some liberties. Like when you move from one medium to another, you're gonna have to take some liberties. You're not gonna be able to capture the same emotions going to animation as you can with live action. And with animation to live action, you can't capture sometimes that grand scope and that feeling that like anything can happen, like the suspension of disbelief. You kind of lose some of that ability. So I think that there are strengths, like going in either direction, there's strengths and weaknesses, but there's also like just tell a good story. And if you're not telling a good story, people are going to notice and they're going to get bored. So if you're taking liberties with what's happening and you're just making a bad film, that's how you end up with all these remakes that suck. So I don't know if I can really name you one other than Alita, which I haven't seen. And I've also heard that the Cinderella remake was not bad.
Actually, that's most people's favorite.
Pretty good, yeah.
Most people's favorite. And it was the first one, I believe.
No,
that
Alice
Disney...
in Wonderland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but that was more of an adaptation.
But they fall in the same realm, I feel.
Yeah, to more or less. And I actually kind of like the first one.
No, it's good, yeah. It made over $1 billion.
Did it really?
Yeah, it was like when the billion mark started getting hit like rapidly.
Yeah.
It was one of the first top like 10 that hit over $1 billion.
I liked parts of it. Like it's the Tweedledum and Tweedledee look like awful, weird, some of the CGI is a little dated now. But like the Bandersnatch, is cool. And like, there's all these different characters, like when she wears the armor at the end and they have that big fight. Like there's some cool stuff that happens in the film. I do kind of enjoy that one. That may be the only one I can really name. I don't know.
Yeah. See, and that's the difference is there's a lot I've seen that I really enjoyed because I can see the cynical view of live action adaptations, but at the same time, I think like you're saying, it's taking things that we've enjoyed as kids and we've seen the scope of what they can do in animation. So when it gets adapted, you're like, oh, I'm losing that. But then maybe
keeping some of it loyal.
Yeah, but maybe the solution would be to get properties that are less known and adapt those. So Alita is a good example. Like you said, it was not a popular anime, but Dragon Ball Z was a popular anime, and that's why it failed because people are like, no, this isn't what it's supposed to be.
Right.
And I personally haven't seen either the movie or the anime, but just based off of everything I've ever heard, I know that's the general thought. And so maybe, just grab the animation that didn't work. Because I've always said, if you're adapting something, you should only adapt it if you're going to be able to add something new to it. And like, that's the thing of adapting movies from like the 70s that had like really early CGI effects.
Yeah.
Now you can make it look really good and take that great story and just do it again, but have the updated effects and everything. Because I know they did the Total Recall adaptation. And then like you're saying, Blade Runner 2049.
Total Recall was not.
But those aren't changing mediums. That's kind of a different thing.
Yeah, but my point being is they're adapting.
They're trying to make it more modern.
They're adding the current technology,
and it wasn't always good because Total Recall wasn't exactly a well done. I preferred the Arnold Schwarzenegger one because it's so cheesy, you can actually get away with a lot of the stuff they were doing.
That's true.
However, in the remake, it seems too realistic, and that's the issue with live action, like we brought up before. It's too realistic that there has to be a balance.
That's actually a good thing. Like I kind of meant to touch on this earlier. Like I feel like oftentimes making things live action is just an excuse to try and make them more adult. Which is not necessarily true.
Or in the case of Aelita, more child-friendly.
Right. Well, like, okay, take for example, and it doesn't exactly fall under this, but you look at something like, Batman v Superman, which I don't consider to be a live-action adaptation because Batman v Superman isn't necessarily like originally an animated thing.
No, it's originally a comic book.
Right. And I don't really count that.
Return of the Dark Knight, that's what it was based off of.
Yeah. So
manga. Comic.
But that's the thing is like you take this thing and now obviously comics can get dark, comics can get really campy too, and they straddle that boundary of being like men in tights fighting each other on rooftops to like gods clashing each other on Earth. Like that's really,
or a human just trying to take down a god.
Or something, right? I mean, you get a huge breadth of types of stories and characters, but then you have Zack Snyder come in and he's like, "I'm going to make this really dark, and everybody's going to be into it, and Batman's going to talk like this, Martha." You're going to get all that stupid crap because it's just an excuse to bash your comic book characters together and then not
take
feel
beloved characters and do what you want
like
with
a baby.
Them. Yeah.
Like it's just an excuse. Like instead of just accepting that things are sometimes corny and like there are bright things and like,
well, I wouldn't say it's just that it's corny. It's just it's hard to write a perfect character like Superman.
Yeah.
That's it. A lot of writers have complained when they've been given the roles to something like that it is hard to write that kind of character. Right. Someone who's so morally structured because we are flawed, which is why they enjoy writing. This is completely off. I'll just finish this thought here. But that's why they enjoy writing like the Harley Quinns, the Jokers. They're easier to write. It's easier to write a flawed character.
Right. But you get like, I don't know. So like, look at, from one example from like Dawn of Justice or whatever. And then you have another comic book adaptation, Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah.
Which accepts and understands that there's an emotional depth to the story. And there's also all that comic-y weirdness and quirkiness. And like, it's all of that stuff combined into the movie.
That makes me bring up another one. Speed Racer. I completely forgot about that.
That's true.
I was going to bring that up, actually.
I love Speed Racer because
I did not hate that film.
Comic
it was
book,
good, yeah.
It's basically an anime adaptation in the fighting, especially when that kid's watching manga or anime on the TV screen and him and the monkey are just voicing the characters.
Yes.
In the whole background behind him turns into like an anime comic book forum where it's like the dots and everything.
Oh, they do such crazy stuff. Like the bokeh in that film is square.
Yep.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's just all sorts of cool little things.
I mean, the reason that film worked is because you had the Matrix directors coming off the Matrix films making that. So
the Wachowski siblings?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so they had
sisters. Yeah, they were siblings, now they're sisters.
No, they were the Wachowski brothers. Then the Wachowski siblings. Now they're Wachowski sisters.
And soon they'll be the Wachowski witches?
No.
I don't know. The witches Wachowski. The Wachowskis.
Oh,
Wachowski.
yeah, I like that. Anyways, the point being is they had the budget basically to be able to do that movie faithfully, and obviously they were fans of that.
Yeah.
And they were able to cast, like, you had John Goodman in there, you had people that actually were popular. So popular directors, popular actors being able to take something more because they are fans of it rather than it's a paycheck. And that's like we said, the heart and the soul of it. Because I'd never seen Speed Racer before, but I could tell. Yeah.
It is. They did what they could.
It has that colorfulness, that youthful energy. It's kind of stupid, but it was kind of a fun film.
It's supposed to be. If you watch Speed Racer
itself,
if you watch Speed Racer itself, it's very much like that. However, the more of the races were like the violent races, like you got at that one scene. They weren't like the track just winning the Grand Prix. It wasn't that.
It wasn't wacky races with snidely whiplash.
It was basically they were going through canyons. They were fighting. They had wings on their cars.
Yeah.
They would have weapons. They would target each other. So it's
a violent version of wacky races.
Yeah. And it worked because they were able to include that in one scene. People were hoping you would be more of that one scene expanded.
Yeah. And I mean, that movie definitely felt grounded also because it was like, oh, you have all this like stuff, but there's still rules to the races where it's like, oh, look, he used this type of tool. He's disqualified. Oh, no, you're going to lose. You have to lose this race. Like, that's how it works. All this is rigged. And so it was this sense of realism rather than like, we're going to go race. Yay! Yeah.
And I did like how they treated the Racer X thing where like it's not too edgy, but it's just enough where you're like, oh, that's so cool. Like, it's cool.
And that's what I mean. Like some of these movies we're talking about, I've never seen the source material.
Yeah.
So it's like, is it a good movie or a bad movie? That's all I can go off of it.
Yeah.
A movie recently I watched that didn't see the source material before, but I could tell it was just a bad film. Aeon Flux.
I've heard,
It is awful.
Yeah.
Have you seen the source material?
I have.
Okay, so you expand then.
Is that the French one where it has like weird?
Are you talking about the live action?
No, the animation.
Yeah.
The animation was MTV actually.
Yeah.
That's what
I'm
thinking of Ultraviolet for some reason.
I actually did enjoy the Ultraviolet movie though. I'm not gonna lie. That one.
Never heard of that.
But
one.
yeah, it I wouldn't say it wasn't completely faithful. It was more campy than even the show, I think. It seemed to just...
That's campy. Because honestly, it felt bleak. It felt boring.
Yeah, the movie was enjoyable for, I guess, what you expected from it. If you were going from the show to the movie, it is a slap in the face if you hadn't seen the movie at all. Okay, what's a good one? Because Ultraviolet... Equilibrium and Aeon Flux kind of are on the same kind of base of being the same kind of tonal film. Equilibrium is everyone's favorite. And then I would say Aeon Flux is basically because it was basically felt more like they were trying to do an Equilibrium type than actually the Aeon Flux story. So it felt more like a Equilibrium copy than anything else.
You mean that's the one with Christian Bale, right? That was a good film.
Yeah, it's really liked because it's basically THX 1138.
That's actually something I noticed. So when I watched The Ghost in the Shell yesterday, they added all these things like story elements from Equilibrium.
Yeah,
they gave her like she has to take this drug in the back of her head and stuff which was a thing from obviously Equilibrium because
that was from THX 1138, George Lucas's first film where it was basically everyone had to take drugs and follow a regimented.
Well, and I mean it's not a new thing.
It's been around forever.
It's Brave New World. It's all that stuff.
Everyone does the same thing over again. Just put it in new shoes. See if anyone will take it.
Right, but it's like I just found it so egregious that they adapted a film that
it's too blatantly obvious,
nothing to do with any of that stuff, and then added all of it later.
Because the Ghost in the Shell had some of the same tonal feel. It was the post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Even though it didn't look it in the manga and anime, it was post-apocalyptic.
Right.
So they decided to take some elements from other movies that had that feel.
Right.
And throw it into Ghost in the Shell to see if this will land because everyone's seen it in every other one.
Everyone likes Blade Runner in America, even though the film flopped, and it's a great film. It's a cult film. It's a cult classic. It's great, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's overzealous directors and they think they're so visionary or what the deal is, but maybe they just need to have more reverence for the things that they're doing.
It might just be the fact that this isn't a long enough runtime. Let's add more.
Which I find that so ridiculous. I actually like films that have shorter runtimes.
Yes.
I think the runtime should match the story.
Well, of course. But there's many stories that have so much bloated material in them, and that was exactly what that adaptation was. It was an extra 40 minutes of garbage that didn't need to be in the film.
Well,
it
that's
had
the thing.
Nothing to do with the original intention of the story.
It should have just been removed. That's the thing. They added stuff on to basically just add time to the film, and they shouldn't do things like that.
And they did that in like I watched the Aladdin remake yesterday, and I watched the Beauty and the Beast remake. Beauty and the Beast remake is like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Well, because they
added 2 new songs.
Well,
they tried to add a backstory to her mother.
Yes.
Yeah. And anyway, I don't know. We've kind of walked around in circles about this for a while, but I want to go.
Netflix, don't touch my One Piece.
Well, it's too late for that.
Actually, I have something
Burn down their studio.
about like whenever they do a live action remake, it's the presentation they chose. Like the Aladdin remake, a lot of people said it should have kind of been like a Bollywood film. In all honesty,
It honestly feels like a Bollywood film. For the most part.
I mean, the Prince Ali is such a weird. The song is such a weird thing because it starts off Bollywood, and then you have Will Smith start like Prince,
rapping.
Fresh Prince like rapping it,
Yeah.
and it's just an odd combo because it's like Bollywood rap. Also trying to honor the original, which was so musically based of like an actual like showman musical.
Yes.
And so it just was three things that did not go well together.
Well,
they
trying
keep
to
adapting,
appease all audiences by ending up not really
appealing
appeasing
to anybody.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move on just for this last segment. I want to go positive. All right. So there are plenty of films that are coming up this year that I'm really not excited for in terms of like, you know, or I would have been, but they got moved back so many times that it makes me kind of like nervous about being excited, like the Dune film or like the upcoming James Bond film or the upcoming Mission Impossible films. Like these things that they might end up being good, but I don't know. I keep getting like Wonder Woman has really like, I didn't expect it to be good, but
it tainted it a lot.
Yes, it did. So, but I think that there's actually a lot of potentially great things in the animated realm that are coming out this year. And so I wanted to end a little more positively and like, let's talk about some of those things that we might be excited for. And I have a list of things, or you can bring up your own or whatever. I know like at least for Disney and Pixar, Disney's going to be releasing Raya the Last Dragon next year, which is like some kind of an action.
That's something I'm actually looking forward to.
It kind of gave me like How to Train Your Dragon vibes. Honestly.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, that looks cool. And then Luca, which I don't think there's any like material
for. Is just kind of an Italian-based film, but we don't know really what it is. But
it's like a kid who comes from the ocean who pretends to be a real human or something like that.
I don't know. It definitely
I haven't heard much about that one.
That definitely has like Coco vibes for like it's going to honor the culture and everything. And so we'll see where that goes.
Also, I know you're going to be excited for this, Preston. The Troll Hunters movie.
Yeah.
Excuse me? What the?
Did you not know about this?
Troll Hunters? They're making a movie?
They're making a troll. So, you know, the series, right?
Yeah, I like the series.
No, yeah. So it's animated. And it's going to encompass all of the shows and be the entire finale to the series.
Oh, okay. So,
okay.
I thought that was just going to be like an hour special. Is it going to be theoretically released?
It says it's a movie.
I'm pretty sure it's a Netflix movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably Netflix. But I mean, there are some great Netflix films out there that are. Don't give me that face. There actually have been some good ones. Klaus is amazing. Klaus is amazing. You know, and they've actually had, I think, a pretty good track record with some of their animation.
Well, their animated shows, like Voltron was good to a point.
They're hit and miss because they
they
tend to fall off the rails very quickly with shows and things.
But I would say Troll Hunters has been pretty darn consistent.
I didn't watch the 2 sequel series yet.
Oh, you didn't watch the...
I don't have Netflix. I can't.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
and I went Disney Plus and HBO Max.
Yeah.
So,
can't afford it now.
Yeah. I love how the Troll Hunter series kind of go backwards in terms of season numbers. Troll Hunters is 3 seasons, 3 Blows 2 seasons, and Wizards is 1 season.
Well, I mean, they're telling the story they need to tell, right?
Yeah.
Because when that first came out, they slated, we're going to do these 3 series. Like that was known, but they also didn't want to draw any of them out longer than they should be. Because like I would have kept on watching Troll Hunters, honestly.
But that's what makes it. But the thing is, if you would have kept watching it, at what point would you realize that this is no longer fresh and new and no longer...
You can stay fresh. Like you have things that go for 10 seasons that can stay really fresh. But then you also have things that can die in 1 season. Like I've watched shows where like just all of a sudden...
Kind of.
No, what I mean though is like
great, though.
It's good. And then all of a sudden there's 1 season that's terrible and everybody mass exodus the series.
Yeah.
Well, I know things can last forever. I mean, look at One Piece. That has been going on since I was a kid.
Isn't it like 1,000 episodes or something?
It just
now?
released 1,000 chapters.
Like, I literally will never touch that because it is too long.
Yeah, you're missing out. It's still one of the greatest stories because it never really does rest. it never really does rest. It just keeps going and building on its own story, building on the universe they have created. And it's rare for a story to actually just get fresh, keep getting fresh.
Yeah.
And that's something I have to give to it. Because if you look at like Dragon Ball Z, which constantly keeps doing the same thing over again. I love Dragon Ball Z, but the thing is, they peaked at the Cell Saga.
I was going to say, it peaked at the Cell Saga.
And after that, it's the same thing over again. You can try to bring in gods and everything, but you can only make the characters so powerful. Are you going to have them fighting the universe next?
Here's the thing, though. As long as there's an audience, it will keep going.
Yeah.
Unless you have like the Gravity Falls creator who did his story and he walked away.
It's about being loyal.
I really appreciate that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I've really liked the Troll Hunters, the Tales of Arcadia series. I mean, it's had its low points, sort of, and it's not always the best, but it's fairly enjoyable. It gives you that kind of 80s feeling, like all these 80s, like kind of like young adult films or family films. It gives me that feeling where it's still appropriate for everybody for the most part. It has just the right amount of weirdness in it. Like,
well, it's definitely not as dark as its book it's based on.
No, and that's what I've heard.
No, I read the first book of Troll, actually the only book for Troll Hunters, and it is so dark.
Yeah,
I mean,
can't pick up the second. It's just like, I think I'll just stick to the kind-hearted show.
No, there isn't a second.
I know. Yeah, I know, but it's just like, I'll have to stick with the show.
I think it works really well. So, I mean, all that's to say, like, I'm actually kind of excited for that, and I'm hoping they give it like the true DreamWorks animation treatment. Yeah, I'm hoping they really put the budget into it.
I mean,
because it deserves that.
I think you'll see it because DreamWorks definitely has a large slate of shows for Netflix, and Netflix, I think, will reward them with a budget to kind of match it because they're wanting these original animated features now. You see the Klaus, you saw the what's other animated ones that were fresh for them?
They had the Green Eggs and Ham series.
No, I'm saying films because they want
the
animated
films.
The Wallabies, was that what it was called?
The Wallabies, that's right. They did that one.
The Little Prince was another adaptation.
That was like 2015. That was a long time ago.
That was one of the first ones. It's actually pretty good.
That was very good.
Yeah,
I saw that
I
one.
liked it. Yeah. But there's a lot. They're trying to go in that route of new animated films just for them. They want that market of
I think
children.
it makes sense, especially with Disney starting to pick up their channel with,
they
have a ton of movies there. Yeah, Pixar movies are there,
Mm-hmm.
and their live action movies are there, and also they're starting to compete with Netflix's original live action shows.
Yes.
With, I mean, look at their Star Wars stuff. So it makes sense that they're trying to do more with their getting DreamWorks to do more for them to help them out with the movies.
And speaking of which, there's actually a couple of good animated shows coming straight to Disney Plus this coming year.
Monsters at Work,
Star Wars Bad Batch, and the Marvel What If series.
I'm really excited for that one.
I'm not sure about the What If because they've already opened a ton of can of worms. What else are they going to open with that one?
I think it's the possibilities of animation. For me, it's kind of why I think that the Star Wars, what are they calling that? The anime one?
Visions.
I'm kind of excited for it in the same way. I don't think that What If will add anything to the series as a whole. I think it will just be fun.
Exactly. And I mean, that's what the comic book it's based on was supposed to be. It's like, oh, what if this happened? Like things they weren't going to ever do in the universe. And it's like,
well, it's fun to play with as a writer, so you know what cause and effect could happen.
Exactly. And they can't ruin the series then, because if they would have done one of the things in like the What If series in the actual universe, it could ruin it. But if they're like, no, this is a one-off. And I see that's what they're doing with the What If animated series, because they're like, no, we're not going to ruin your MCU. We're just going to have fun. This is our play box. Let us play in it.
Yeah, because the What If is basically like Man in the High Castle. If something happened in the past, what drastic changes would happen in the future?
Yeah. No, I think that one will be kind of cool. So, I mean, are there anything that you guys are looking forward to this year that I didn't list?
I have one. It's an Amazon Prime series.
Okay.
It's called Invincible.
Oh, yeah.
I have not heard of that one.
Oh, it's a comedy, right?
No.
Yes, it is.
It's not. No.
Okay, it's from Robert Kirkman, the creator of Walking Dead. It's starring Glenn Stephen Yeun from Walking Dead in that, and it also has an all-star cast. It is going to be a comedy action superhero thing.
Okay.
No, the problem is in the beginning, Invincible was like that, but once it started, when the characters started going older, it started kind of going to older. He started to grow up.
Okay.
It started going to far more mature themes.
Huh. Like, wait, is this already like a comic series or what?
It is a comic series.
It ended a long time ago.
Okay. As long as they adapt it better than that stupid The Boys show. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't a big fan of the comics. I didn't really read them, but man, season 2 crapped the bed so hard.
Basically, what if Peter Parker was the son of Superman? That's kind of how it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know too much about that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen any screenshots. I did see it in a list, but I didn't know enough
but Amazon has kind of already failed with superheroes for me, so that's a risk now.
But
well, how was the Tick show? Did you watch the Tick?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay.
I actually loved it, and that's got canceled, but
yeah,
had a huge fan base because it was a comedic aspect.
Well, yeah, the Tick was always funny and like hyper violent.
Yeah, and would destroy everything. Just never think he did anything wrong.
I guess that actually is a live action because the Tick was animated. It
was animated first. Yeah,
that's true.
It was an animation first, and it was really actually loyal to it because the Tick in animation was always just an annoyance. He was always an annoyance. And
he's a Tick.
Yeah, and here it's just it works so well. He's just. Yeah, it's just like he's on you the entire time.
Maybe I'll check it out.
That's the second live action version. The first one.
There's a movie, right?
Yeah,
no, there's a TV.
No, I think it was a movie.
I think it was a movie.
It was a TV show.
Really?
Okay.
It was with Patrick Warburton as the Tick.
Yeah, I thought it was a movie.
He's right.
It was around the same time they did the Flash movies.
Yeah.
The original.
But one that I'm excited for it's called Jellystone ! And I actually didn't know about it until today.
Yogi Bear?
Yes,
thing?
it's about Yogi Bear and a lot of the other characters who kind of were Hanna-Barbera.
Okay.
It's in there, but the reason I'm excited for this is it's from the creator of Chowder. C.H. Greenblatt.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's going to be interesting.
Yes. And so he's getting to play around with some old school characters that honestly have so much heart.
Yes.
And you have a guy that just cares deeply about his characters, and all his jokes are super timeless, honestly. Because Chowder, you can watch it back then, you can watch it now. It's going to be a timeless series. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm excited about, because could you imagine just, him writing for Hey Boo Boo, like all that stuff, but making it timeless. Like that series was already timeless. And then he's going to be able to adapt on that and carry it through this century.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. That's a different pick for sure. What about you? You got anything, Levi?
I've got none. I am excited for the Ghost Hunters. I wasn't exactly sure that they were going to make a movie adaptation of that.
Ghost Hunters.
I mean, sorry.
Oh, Troll Hunters.
Troll Hunters.
I'm sitting there like, what the heck, Ghost Hunters?
It was like, what the heck? Was I watching that the other day?
I'm like, are you trying to say Ghostbusters?
Yeah.
Great movie.
Which one?
2016. That's the best one. Everyone knows it's 2016.
Get out of here now.
Yeah, it's so good that they literally pretend it don't happen and have an adaptation, the new sequel to the old series. Yes. Yeah. So like that 2016 literally just
doing
disappeared.
That's actually a good example of a bad adaptation where it's like you could have just made expanded the universe instead of redoing it.
Exactly.
Because it's been many years since the first one. Instead of just doing the whole thing over again. That's what made Christopher Robin so good is they went ahead. He was an older version of himself.
Ghostbusters could have been like an organization that had multiple branches and they're in a broke branch somewhere. They have no money.
That was basically what they were playing with the 2016. They were going to have a shared universe and they were going to...
It would make so much... Anyway, we're getting back to that. So there's actually a huge slew of very exciting, I think, anime shows coming out this year.
Okay, let's hear it.
Okay, so Promised Neverland Season 2.
Okay.
Dr. Stone Season 2.
Okay.
Beastars Season 2.
Excited.
Attack on Titan, the final season. ReZero Season 2. My Hero Season 5.
Only one of these I've watched.
And Thus Spoke Rohan Kishibe, the JoJo spinoff.
That's going to be live action. Or is there...
No, that's an animated.
Because I know they're doing a live action.
Really?
Yeah. It's an adaptation of the OVAs.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dr. Stone is going to be amazing.
Oh my God. Season 1.
I'm not going to spoil it for you.
Season 1 was so good.
It really is faithful to the manga.
I was blown away.
Far.
I was blown away by the quality of that show and Promised Neverland last year.
It looks so clean.
Yes. So I mean, those shows, even half of those shows in 1 year would probably be really exciting. But I mean, just all of those, and I don't think they're all releasing at the same time. I think they're stretched out. there's going to be probably some good content like ongoing throughout 2021. And of course, we can always talk about that here on the podcast. So I like that too.
Well, and the cool thing too is animation can work even through a pandemic. So they didn't ever have to stop. So we're still going to consistently be getting our animation, and for you guys, your anime. But yeah, unlike all these other shows that literally had to stop because they're like, we can't meet in person. It's like animation can work from people's houses.
Well,
they
it's brilliant. Like, so the way that I was watching all the behind the scenes from Disney's Soul, and they had on the the extras or whatever. And there was an entire like 10-minute segment that talked about how they did the film through the pandemic. And it was really fascinating because Disney had transitioned from doing like giant like graphics computers in everybody's offices to a network hub where everybody is basically remotely working on a server farm. So
that's smart.
And it makes sense
because it makes it easier to tap in. Because I was thinking, if everyone's working from home, those are huge banks of files.
So that's
they're gonna have to tap into.
That's essentially what like Google Stadia is trying to do. Is they just have a big farm where they just have these really nice computers, and you run off of that remotely. So they did that when they went to everybody's houses. All they did was just network to their houses. And of course, they brought some gear and some of their stuff, but like for the most part, it was just like, the computers are still doing their thing at Disney headquarters, and you're at home working. And they animated and finished the film and did everything that way. I mean, and you can do dialogue remotely for the most part. Like, it's very easy
you need
to record.
A clean room and things like that. So they would have to bring the people in.
But it's pretty simple, right?
Because you need just like one person running the board, and then the voice actor.
Right, and they never have to be in the same room.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously, like that is, you're correct. Like, you can keep getting animated content, and it's not going to, I don't think, take the quality really down.
Not at all.
It might actually go up because people could actually spend more time passionately. Because if someone gets passionate about a shot, they're going to put more effort into that shot than anything else. Like in Soul, they had the close-ups, and imagine the time and effort, but they came out so beautifully. You could tell that someone actually cared to get it perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that's the thing too, is people being home, they're more comfortable. They might work on it easier.
Yeah.
And then too, it's like, rather than knowing, okay, I need to put 40 hours this week, and I realize animation is a lot more than 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
But they can do it whenever they feel like. They don't have like consistent hours they have to fill. It's just like, oh, I need to hit this when I can get to it. May that be 2 a.m. to 9 a.m. for some people that are night owls. That might have worked better for them.
Yeah.
Just being at home where they can go in wherever they feel like it.
And of course, I mean, they have deadlines and they have meetings.
Exactly.
And things like that. Everybody does. But there is a certain level of freedom that you get from being able to work. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Having had COVID myself, I got the podcast started because I had it, because I actually was able to stay home. I didn't have to go into work. Like, I could accomplish a lot of things and get the ball rolling on things that I couldn't do normally when I was out and about going to work.
In other words, thank you, COVID.
Yes, thank you, COVID.
But one thing,
for launching this podcast.
One thing that's also very beneficial for them is when it comes to meeting a deadline, a lot of the times you would see videos of it being people taking it on their phone when it's meeting the deadline in one of those animation studios. Everyone's sleeping at their desk or under their desk.
Yeah.
And that does affect
true.
workflow because they wake up from being uncomfortable all night, start working on their computer. Here, if they need to meet a deadline, they can get like a 2-hour nap in a soft bed, which will be far more productive for them than sleeping 4 hours underneath their desk.
Yeah. And there's obviously, like, there's benefits to meeting in person and doing things in person. Like, doing a conference on Zoom, everyone knows how much it sucks. Like, it's no good. Being in the room, being able to pitch an idea and read the energy from people.
Mute your camera.
You can't just mute somebody's camera, right? Like, you're seeing them, you're seeing their reaction. Like, okay, how are they like reading what I'm trying to tell them? Like, do they understand what I'm trying to get at them? Are they annoyed because I'm making their job harder or something?
It's different when it's just like in Zoom, it's primarily just the face you're talking to. But when you're talking to someone in person, you can see how they're fidgeting in their chair, their arms, everything. Everything kind of helps tell you what they're trying to say.
You can smell their body odor.
Yeah.
You can see the Cheeto dust on their fingers.
as they're giving you a tattoo.
Yeah. But
So, I mean, yeah, I don't know. Does anybody else have anything to kind of talk about? Or
the last thing I want to say really is just a new slogan for the podcast, Pleb Critics, brought to you by COVID.
Yeah, I'll need to make a little jingle there.
Yeah.
I do got to say, I'm glad that you were going to bring up Speed Racer, and I thought of it before you, so I got to say it. That is my favorite.
Okay.
Right there.
I'll have to go rewatch that because I remember not hating it when it came out. And of course, that wasn't like a huge thing, the animated remakes and stuff like that. But
yeah, because I think a lot of people went to it thinking it was going to be a serious movie. And
really?
Yeah, I was surprised. I don't know why, because I think Fast and Furious was a very big thing at that point in time.
No, that was about 2009, I want to say, that Speed Racer came out. And Fast and the Furious wasn't to the heights that we have now.
Yeah, but all racing movies were pretty much identical. I mean, even the original Fast and the Furious was more about racing.
Well, yeah,
and then
it was about the
Speed
heist,
Racer goes this route of being more cartoonish than anything else. And we hadn't had a racing movie like that beforehand until Fast and Furious. Nobody liked.
But it's not about the
first one is.
It's about racing, but it's about a guy that becomes not a jerk.
That's true.
That's kind of what it's more plot driven and that's character driven in that sense.
Yeah.
It's not like.
But I think a lot of people were thinking it is just going to be something that it wasn't. I think if they came out like after probably all these Fast and the Furious movies, maybe it'd be a little more accepted because it's just like, oh, it's cars. We're going to see it jumping over buildings, flying through space. Because let's face it, in Speed Racers, cars do fly.
Yeah.
So,
or like you can get the ultimate animated racing experience, IGPX. Did you ever watch that?
No.
Oh, it's basically like Gundam, but they race on like big giant robot skates.
Because of course they do.
Okay, I think I've seen pieces of it. I've never actually watched it.
It was a limited series from Toonami back in the day.
Okay, yes, I did watch it when it came on.
Yep, I did not watch it, but I remember the commercials. It was like super 2000s. Like it bled 2000s.
Yeah. I watched it when it came on. It's completely forgettable because I couldn't even remember.
I just remember the robots were cool. And it had
robots are always cool.
It had a cool soundtrack. Very, very interesting.
You know what? I just realized we did not talk about one of the biggest live action adaptions ever had a huge series, and we didn't even talk about it.
The Flintstones.
Transformers.
Yeah.
I mean, love it or hate it. It was an animated series.
Okay. The first movie is amazing.
Yes, but it made... Okay, how many are there? 5?
6.
Really?
Because they made
not counting Bumblebee.
Yeah, Bumblebee doesn't. I don't really count
Bumblebee's
that.
separate.
That's basically a reboot. At
yeah,
this point.
it kind of was.
Okay. A reboot of.
I did
it was actually
Bumblebee
enjoyable.
was good. Yeah,
a reboot of a
Although I
kind of
felt like Bumblebee and the girl were gonna kiss at the end.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck is
there
going?
Was like
what is this relationship?
There was a weird energy between that totally read wrong. I was like, they're underwater, like touching each other on the face,
staring,
and
the shape of metal.
Wait, there was. I remember this. There was a Transformers anime, and one of the Transformers was stalking this girl.
Man.
Yep.
And it was big.
then that's another thing. We'll stop talking about it. But like, they could have adapted that to a high budget animation, and it's probably still would be like a better film. I don't know. That's just me.
But the first Transformers was a great film because the characters were more humorous, and then I think they just tried to get more serious while making the robots humorous.
Well, and then they changed the protagonist and everything.
The first one,
I mean, for good reasons. Shia kind of went off the...
The first one, it's the Autobots who are the main characters, basically. And everyone else is more humorous. All the humans are jokes. And then in the second one, all the Autobots are the joke. And the humans are the main focus. And it's just like, that was a complete flip. I liked it the other way around because, let's face it, we humans to machines would probably be very humorous. So I felt like I was watching it from the machine's point of view. These foolish little squishy humans not really knowing what they're doing in life, fooling around, messing up everything. And especially that agent from Sector 7.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, you can't get more human than that pompous guy.
And I can never see him as anything other than the Jesus from Big Lebowski. Anyway, I think that's all we have for today.
Yep.
So if you like this video, don't forget to comment, share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already.
Over here as well at L Scribbler.
Yep, exactly. So, I don't know. I guess that's it. We're signing out. Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Toodles.
Pleb Critics, brought to you by COVID.